The dusty streets of Khyber buzzed with life. Children chasing tires, women arguing over tomatoes, and men gathered near corners talking politics and football. Amid all that chaos, Achieng walked quietly, her head low, holding a plastic bag of maize flour. Her feet ached. Her heart ached more. She was only 19. Slim, with deep brown skin that shined under the sun, and large eyes that always looked like they were holding back tears. Achieng had grown up too fast. Her mother had died during childbirth. Her father, once, the strong man who laid bricks for rich people's homes, was now lying in bed coughing blood, his lungs failing. Her two younger brothers hadn't eaten since yesterday. Life was cruel to poor girls like her. She worked as a maid in the upscale part of Nairobi, in a white-walled mansion owned by Mr. Barasa, a rich man with greying hair, wrinkled skin, and eyes that looked like they saw everything. He had 4 cars, 3 businesses, and a wife who had died long ago. Rumors said he buried her with his own hands, but no one knew the truth. All they knew was he was powerful, feared, and alone. Achieng kept to herself. She scrubbed floors, washed dishes, and cleaned his marble toilet till it sparkled. She never looked him in the eye. She always said yes, sir, even when she wanted to scream. Then one evening everything changed. She came home to find her father lying on the ground, gasping for air. Neighbours stood around helpless. The hospital said they needed 250,000 shillings up front before even giving him oxygen. She didn't have 250. That night she cried like a child on the kitchen floor of Mr. Barasa's house, silent sobs into her apron. He saw her. "What happened, girl?" he asked, voice calm like always. "My papa." "He's dying," she whispered. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat. "How much?" she told him. He didn't blink. "I can give you the money." She looked up, eyes wide. "But," he added slowly, "I don't give for free." Her stomach turned. "I want something in return," he said, walking to his whiskey shelf. She didn't respond. "I'm an old man, Achieng. I've had money, women, power, but not loyalty, not peace." He turned and looked directly at her. "Marry me." It felt like the air disappeared from the room. "Marry you?" "Yes." "Become my wife. Live here. No more cleaning floors." "I'll take care of your father, your brothers, everything." She stared at him, frozen. "You're 19, he said. "Old enough, it's legal, and better than being on the street begging." She didn't sleep that night. She watched her father's weak chest rise and fall. She looked at her brothers, their tiny limbs curled like baby goats from hunger. The next morning, she gave her answer. "I'll marry you." By afternoon, her father was in the best hospital. Nurses smiled at her. Her name was suddenly on VIP guest lists. Barasa had bought her a gold necklace. He even sent food parcels to her neighborhood. People started whispering, "She's the maid who caught the rich man's eye. She sold herself for money. She's smart. She's shameless." But none of them knew the war inside her. The wedding was rushed. Simple, small, but legal. She wore a white dress that didn't feel like hers. His touch during the vows made her skin crawl. He kissed her cheek in front of everyone, and her knees almost buckled, but her father was alive. That night, she sat on the bed in the master bedroom, stiff as stone. He walked in wearing a white robe, holding wine in one hand. "You're mine now," he said softly, smiling. She nodded. "But don't think I'm a fool, Achieng. I know how girls like you think." He stepped closer, voice suddenly cold. "Try to play me, and I will bury your whole family." She blinked. That was the moment she realized. This wasn't a marriage. It was a contract signed in fear, and she had just stepped into something far darker than she could imagine. Achieng learned quickly that in Barasa's mansion, silence was survival. Every step she took was watched by cameras. Every room had eyes. She wasn't just a wife. She was a possession, a well-dressed prisoner behind designer curtains and polished tiles. Her old clothes were burned. Her phone was replaced with a new one, but with a tracker. Her contact list was empty. Even when she stared out the window, the guards would shift nervously, waiting for her to try something. Barasa wasn't violent. Not yet, but he didn't need to be. His words alone sliced through her spirit like a blade. "Smile more," he'd say in front of guests. "You're a wife now. Act like it. No more visits to Kybera. Your people will survive without you now." At night he would touch her back like she was his. She would flinch. Some nights he left her alone. Other nights he didn't. She'd cry into the pillow when he slept, lips bitten to silence, but she never showed weakness in the day. That was her quiet rebellion. She held her head high. Her eyes didn't tremble. And when the maids whispered, behind her back she ignored them, until one day one of them didn't whisper. Mama Achieng, a young maid named Wanjiru, said carefully, placing folded towels on the edge of the bed, "I saw you before. Before all this, you used to smile?" Achieng looked up. "You were kind, you never shouted, even when your back was breaking." Achieng nodded slowly. "And now?" Wanjiru hesitated. "Now you look like a ghost." That night, Achieng stood, in the mirror, staring at herself. Expensive makeup, straightened hair, a silk nightgown that smelled of French perfume. But her eyes, they were hollow. The next day, Barasa took her to a charity gala, one of those rich people gatherings where everyone wears long dresses, sips wine, and lies with polished teeth. He held her waist tightly, showed her off like a trophy. She was a maid in my house, he laughed to a group of men in tuxedos. "Now look at her, my wife, hard work pays off, eh?" They all laughed. She didn't. That's when she saw him, Omari. He stood near the drinks table, wearing a black suit. Tall, lean, and with that quiet strength in his posture. He wasn't part of the rich crowd. He looked like hired security. But there was something in his eyes that made her chest tighten. He looked at her like she was human, not a doll, not property, not a scandal. When their eyes met, he gave a small nod, polite, respectful. But something sparked. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Later that evening, as she walked to the bathroom, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned sharply, but it was him, Omari. "Sorry, madam," he said quickly, stepping back. "I didn't mean to scare you." She looked at him for a moment. "You're not with the guests?" "No, private security." "I don't talk unless spoken to." She nodded slowly, then whispered, "Then don't talk. Just listen." And for a moment she let the truth out. Her voice low, shaking, she told him what her life had become. Not everything, just enough. Enough. For someone to know she was drowning. Omari didn't interrupt. When she stopped, he looked at her carefully. "You're brave," he said softly. But bravery in a golden cage still cuts. Then he walked away, leaving her heart thudding louder than it had in months. The next day, she found a note under her pillow. Just 5 words, written in pen on a plain slip of paper. "You are not alone." Oh. It was the first time since her wedding she felt anything close to hope. But hope in Barasa's world was a dangerous thing, because secrets don't stay buried forever. And someone, somewhere in that mansion, was always watching. Achieng kept the note hidden beneath her mattress. It was barely 5 words, but she read them every night like a prayer. "You are not alone." In a house where every smile was fake and every wall whispered, those 5 words gave her a reason to breathe again. She saw Omari only in glimpses, by the gate near the cars, standing tall beside Barasa when they left the mansion for events. He never looked at her for too long, never lingered. But when their eyes did meet, it was like the world paused for a breath. Still, she knew better than to hope too much, because Barasa had changed. He had started asking more questions, getting more possessive, touching her in public, just to show ownership. He'd lock the door at night and keep the key beside his bed. Once he found her talking to one of the new cooks and dragged her into the hallway by her wrist, hissing in her ear. "You want to act like some street girl again? Keep testing me." His eyes didn't blink, his smile was gone. All that remained was control. But the more he tightened his grip, the more something inside Achieng began to crack. Not with fear, but fury. She had given everything, her body, her future, her name. And still he acted like she owed him more. One morning, while pretending to organize the wardrobe, she found a black folder at the back of a drawer. It was heavy, wrapped in leather, sealed with a silver clip. She opened it carefully, and what she saw made her hands go cold. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Girls, young girls. Some wore maid uniforms, others were in hospital beds. One photo had a girl smiling awkwardly beside Barasa with the same wedding necklace Achieng now wore. Under each photo was a file, names, birthplaces, short notes, and then death certificates. Her breath caught in her throat. She dropped the folder and slammed the drawer shut, hands shaking. That evening she waited near the stairs where Omari always passed during his rounds. When he appeared, she didn't hesitate. "I need to talk." "Alone," she whispered quickly. He hesitated, glancing at the cameras. "Greenhouse," he murmured. "Midnight. Don't be late." That night, when the house was dead silent, she slipped out like a shadow, wearing only slippers and a light shawl. The guards didn't notice. Omari had changed their shift times. She ran through the garden barefoot and ducked into the greenhouse. He was already there. When she told him what she'd found, his face didn't change, but his hands curled into fists. "I knew something was off," he said quietly. "That man, he's protected by politicians, judges, police. No one touches him." Achieng felt her knees weaken. "So what do we do?" "We plan," he said. "Carefully. You can't leave yet, not without proof. That file, that's just the beginning." "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm not," he replied, stepping closer. "Because I've watched you. You're stronger than anyone in that house." And for the first time she let herself lean into him, her head against his chest. Just for a second. Just to remember what warmth felt like. But behind them, in the corner of the greenhouse, a light blinked red, a tiny camera, hidden in the soil, activated, watching, recording. And by dawn, someone else had already seen the footage. Barasa didn't speak to her the next morning. He didn't touch her, didn't greet her, didn't even glance her way over breakfast, which was worse than being yelled at, because silence from Barasa was like the calm before a thunderstorm. And Achieng could feel the tension in the air, the heaviness pressing down on the walls, on the maids, even on the guards. Everyone walked more carefully that day. Even the chef forgot to season the soup. At noon, she found her phone missing. By evening, her wardrobe was half empty. Most of her personal clothes were gone, replaced with dull, colorless dresses that looked more like uniforms. She asked a maid about it. The girl just looked away. Then, after dinner, Barasa called her into his office. He sat behind his large desk, a glass of brandy in one hand, his eyes fixed on the tablet in front of him. When she entered, he didn't say a word, just pressed play. The video rolled. It was her, standing in the greenhouse with Omari, whispering, holding his chest. That single, stolen moment of peace now turned into evidence. Her stomach twisted. "You think I'm a joke?" Barasa's voice was calm, too calm. She opened her mouth. "It's not what you—" He stood up. "Don't insult my intelligence, Achieng." She flinched. "I gave you life," he shouted. "I gave your dying father breath. I pulled your little brothers out of the dirt, and you thank me by spreading your legs for a watchman?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You're mine," he hissed, stepping closer. "Every part of you. Don't forget that." "I never asked for your money," she whispered, shaking. "I sold myself to save my family. Don't make it sound like love." He slapped her. It wasn't hard, but it wasn't soft either. Her cheek burned, her heart burned worse. She stumbled back, blinking through tears. "You will stay in this house," he growled. "But from now on you don't speak to anyone. You don't leave your room without permission, and that body of yours? It belongs to me. I'll use it when I feel like it and leave it when I don't." She looked at him, hatred bubbling so strong it almost made her dizzy. "Omari's gone," he added, smiling cruelly. "Fired. This morning. He's probably already on a bus, back to his village. You won't see him again." Her heart cracked in half. "But," Barasa continued, taking a deep sip of his brandy, "if you're clever, if you behave, I might let your family live a little longer. You know hospitals are very sensitive to payment delays." That night Achieng didn't cry. She stared at the ceiling, thinking. She had nothing left, no friends, no phone, no contact with Omari. Her family's safety now dangled by a string tied to Barassa's fingers. But one thing remained, that black folder. She remembered every page, every name, every girl. Some of them probably just like her, promised safety, but buried in silence. She wasn't going to be next. So 2 nights later, while Barassa snored loudly in their shared bedroom, she slipped out of bed and crept into his office. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold marble tiles. Her hands shook, but her heart was cold now. Focused, she opened the drawer. The folder was gone. Panic rose in her throat. Then, behind her, the lights flicked on. Barassa stood in the doorway, wearing only his robe. In his hand was the folder. His eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. "You just don't learn, do you?" She backed away slowly. He stepped forward. "No more games," he said, voice deadly calm. "Now I'll show you what happens to girls who dig where they shouldn't." And in that moment she knew, if she didn't escape now, she'd never see sunlight again. Achieng didn't scream, didn't beg. She stood frozen, her heart thundering so loud it nearly drowned out Barassa's footsteps as he approached, holding the black folder like a weapon. His robe swayed behind him like the shadow of death. "You thought you were smart," he said, voice flat. "I watched you tiptoe like a rat in my house, sneaking, whispering with that bastard watchman. You really thought I wouldn't find out?" She tried to move, to run, but he slammed the door shut and locked it behind him. "You think this folder scares me?" He tossed it onto the floor, papers scattered like broken wings across the carpet. "Those girls? They were nothing. Just like you were, poor, desperate, replaceable." Achieng's fists clenched. "But I made you something," he continued. "I gave you gold, food, comfort. You should have worshipped me." She stared at the folder on the floor. The faces of the girls stared back at her, silenced souls, forgotten, abused. "You'll end up just like them," he whispered, stepping close. "If you don't shut up, if you don't obey." She looked up at him, something in her eyes burning hotter than fear. "I'm not like them," she said quietly. And then, before he could react, she moved. She grabbed the crystal paperweight on his desk and swung with everything she had. It crashed into the side of his head. Blood sprayed across the white walls. He let out a twisted growl, falling to his knees, stunned. She didn't wait. She grabbed the folder and ran, out the door, through the hallway, barefoot and shaking. The guards were gone, probably asleep. Maybe Omari had trained them to be lazy. She didn't care. She bolted to the back gate, heart in her throat, and then a shadow stepped in front of her. She gasped, but it wasn't a guard. It was Omari, alive. He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her into the bushes behind the house. "You didn't think I'd leave you here, did you?" "I thought," he said. "I made it look like I left. I knew he'd try something. I've been watching, waiting." She was breathless. "He's bleeding. He's mad. He'll kill us both." "I know," Omari said, grabbing the folder. "That's why we don't stop running." They moved like hunted animals, through shadows, through hedges, avoiding cameras and slipping into the night. His friend waited with a car 2 blocks down, a junky Toyota, old but reliable. They jumped in and sped off before the mansion could even wake up. They didn't stop driving until they reached a quiet apartment in Eastlands, far from the polished gates of Barassa's world. Inside, Omari finally turned to her. "You did it. You got the proof." She nodded, still trembling. "Now we bring him down." He placed the folder on the table. Inside were files, documents, names, accounts, enough to raise eyebrows in high places, but not enough to guarantee justice. Barassa had money, power, police in his pocket. They needed more and time was running out. "Do you trust me?" Omari asked. Achieng looked into his eyes. She remembered the man who had seen her when she was invisible, who listened when no one else cared, who came back for her when she thought she was alone. "I do. Then we fight." And just as she thought she could breathe again, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "Run all you want, but I always win. B." She stared at the screen, her blood turning ice cold. Barassa wasn't going to take this quietly. He was coming, and this time he wouldn't make the mistake of letting her live. The apartment in Eastlands was tiny, cracked walls, dusty fan, and the smell of old wood. But to Achieng it felt like the first real place she could breathe in months. No cameras, no cold marble floors, no man watching her like a possession. But that peace didn't last long. Omari stood by the window, eyes scanning the street. He hadn't sat down once since they arrived. The black folder lay open on the table, surrounded by scribbled notes and a cheap laptop he borrowed from a friend. "We have to act fast," he said. "Barasa's already making moves. If we don't hit first, we're finished." Achieng stared at her phone, the message still glowing. "I always win." She wanted to throw the phone against the wall, but instead she turned it off and slid it under a cushion. "What's the plan?" Omari paced. "We take the folder to someone who can't be bought. There's a journalist, Mukami Owino. Tough, sharp, been trying to expose Nairobi's elite for years. She'll believe us? She will when she sees this." He tapped the folder. The next morning they dressed in borrowed clothes and took a boda across town. The wind on Achieng's face felt like freedom, even as her stomach twisted with every turn. They met Mukami in a small cafe tucked behind a petrol station. She wore dreadlocks tied in a bun, black jeans, and eyes that had clearly seen too much of the world. "You better not be wasting my time," she said, before even sitting. Omari handed her the folder. She flipped through the files in silence. As the pages turned, her face changed, from suspicion to shock to quiet fury. "My God," she muttered, This is enough to make headlines across the continent." "We need to take him down," Achieng said, her voice steady. "Mukami." Closed the folder slowly. "This isn't just gossip. These are accusations of rape, trafficking, murder. If we go public, he'll come after all of us." "He already is," Omari replied. "We're past fear." Mukami nodded once. "Give me 48 hours." They left the cafe with hearts heavy but hopeful. Finally, the truth was in motion. But that night, hell arrived. The front door of the apartment burst open at 2 a.m. 3 men, suits, guns, cold eyes. Achieng screamed as Omari jumped up to shield her. One of the men hit Omari in the stomach with a baton, hard. Another grabbed Achieng by the wrist and slapped her across the face. "Where's the file?" The leader hissed. "We don't have it anymore," she cried. "It's gone." They didn't believe her. One of them pulled out a knife. "We'll cut it out of you, girl. Maybe not from your mouth, but somewhere." Omari, coughing blood, managed to crawl toward them. "Touch her again," he growled, "and I swear even in hell I'll find you." The leader raised his gun, but before he could shoot, headlights flooded the room. A van screeched to a halt outside. Mukami jumped out with 3 men. Camera. Crew armed with nothing but guts and a broadcast drone already flying. "Smile, cowards," she shouted, holding up her phone. "You're live." The gunman froze. "You think you're invisible because you serve a rich man? The world is watching now." They bolted. One jumped out the back window. Another got tackled by a neighbor. Omari collapsed, bleeding from the mouth. Achieng dropped to her knees beside him, sobbing. "Stay with me, please, stay with me." "I told you," he whispered, weakly holding her hand. "I'm not leaving you behind." Mukami knelt beside them, face pale. "You two just lit a fire. And I swear the whole country's going to see how dirty Barasa really is." Sirens wailed in the distance. Help was coming, but Achieng knew it wasn't over. This was just the beginning of war. By morning, the story was everywhere. Exclusive. Billionaire Barasa accused of rape, trafficking and murder by former maid-turned-wife. Justice or scandal? Nairobi's elite rocked by explosive footage. Who is Achieng? The girl. Who stood against a giant? News anchors debated it. Hashtags trended, radio hosts argued. Street vendors shouted her name like it belonged to a celebrity. Some called her brave, others called her a liar. But no one was ignoring her anymore. And Barasa, he vanished. Just like that. No press conference, no court appearance, no statements. His house was emptied overnight, guards gone, cameras off. His companies went silent. Like a ghost, he disappeared into the shadows. But the war wasn't over. Omari was recovering slowly in a small clinic Mukami trusted. His ribs were cracked, and one of his kidneys had taken damage. Achieng sat by his bed every day, feeding him, changing his bandages, holding his hand when the pain made him grit his teeth. He tried to smile. "You're still here?" She nodded. "Where else would I be?" He whispered. "This isn't how I imagined winning you." She laughed through tears. "I didn't imagine being won. They stayed quiet for a moment. Then she added, "I never asked to be a hero." "You became one anyway," he said. Meanwhile, Mukami's team wasn't sleeping. They were digging deeper, pulling old hospital records, missing person files and hidden bank transfers. Every new piece of evidence painted Barasa darker than before. He hadn't just abused girls, he ran a whole ring. Officials, doctors, even pastors were connected. All of them linked to one man. Some names dropped out of fear, others were arrested. But Barasa still hadn't shown his face. Until one night, Achieng's phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered, hand shaking. His voice slithered through the line, like a snake in tall grass. "You think you've won?" Barasa said. "You think this is justice? You think they care about you? The moment the next scandal comes, you'll be forgotten like a roadside stray." She said nothing. "You'll lose everything again, and when that happens, no one will be there to save you." Her voice didn't shake. "I don't need saving anymore." "Then I'll come and bury you myself." The line went dead. She stood there, breathing hard, her fingers tight around the phone. Then she turned to Mukami and said, "I want to finish this. Not just the evidence, I want the world to see what he really is." Mukami hesitated. "You mean, I want to speak, live, my face, my story, everything. You're sure?" "I'm done hiding." So they set it up, a live interview with Kenya's biggest TV station. Achieng sat in front of millions of eyes wearing a simple Kitengela dress, no makeup, no jewelry, just truth. And when she spoke, she didn't just talk about herself. She talked about all the girls who had no voice, all the poor families forced to choose between food and dignity, all the rich men who fed on silence and thought money would bury sin. She ended with one line, "Was a maid. I became a wife, but now I am free." The studio went quiet. The nation wept, some cheered, others marched in protest. A fire had started, and it wasn't stopping. The government had no choice now. A full investigation was opened. Warrants were issued. Even international watchdogs stepped in. Barasa's face was now not just on news, it was on wanted posters, but Achieng knew better than to celebrate too soon. Because evil men don't run, they reload. The sun was setting over Nairobi, casting a golden glow across the city, like it didn't know how much darkness had passed through its streets. Achieng stood on the rooftop of the safe house, watching the skyline in silence. Below her, the city buzzed with life, horns shouting vendors, the hum of boda-bodas weaving through traffic. None of them knew that somewhere in the cracks of this city, a monster was still breathing. 2 weeks had passed since the live interview. Barasa was still missing, but signs of his shadow lingered, an anonymous car trailing Mukami's vehicle. Strange clicks on Achieng's phone, a break-in at the safe house with nothing stolen but the CCTV hard drive. "I can feel him," Achieng said one night, standing beside Omari. "He's close." Omari nodded. His body was healing, but his spirit still carried scars. "He'll come for you. He won't let you be the one who got away." That night Mukami called. Her voice was tight, urgent. "Get ready." We found him. Barasa was hiding. In a private compound in Naivasha, rented under a fake name, guarded by former police officers who had no loyalty to law, only money. But someone on the inside had talked, and now they had a location. Achieng didn't hesitate. "I want to face him." Omari tried to stop her. "No, let the police handle it." She shook her head. "This man took my soul. I need him to see that he didn't kill it." So the next morning they went. Mukami, Omari, Achieng, 2 unarmed private detectives, one goal, finish it. The compound was large, hidden by trees and high walls, but Barasa wasn't hiding inside. He was sitting in the garden, waiting, dressed in white, calm like he was still in control. When Achieng stepped through the gate, he looked at her and smiled. "You came." She walked forward slowly. "No fear, just fury and truth. I came to finish what you started." He chuckled. "You think this is over? My friends are still in power. My name still carries weight." "Not anymore," Mukami said behind her, holding up a phone streaming everything live. "This time the whole world's watching again." Barasa's face twitched. "You made me into a puppet," Achieng said, her voice loud and clear. "You used my poverty, my love for my family. And you turned me into your prisoner. You said yes. I said yes to saving lives. You turned that into rape, into death, into silence, but I'm not silent anymore. Barasa stood. His eyes darkened. Be careful, girl. You're not untouchable. She took one step closer. Neither are you. Sirens howled in the distance. He froze. Your people are gone. Your accounts are frozen. Your secrets are now headlines. You don't own the law anymore. You can't run now. And just like that, the man who once walked through marble floors like a king sat back down like a ghost of himself. When the police arrived, he didn't resist. They cuffed him, read his rights, and walked him out like any other criminal. Not a tycoon, not a billionaire, just a man, a fallen one. 6 months later, Barasa stood, trial for everything: rape, trafficking, assault, illegal businesses, conspiracy, and more. His courtroom breakdown went viral. His allies denied him. His lawyers quit. He was sentenced to life in prison. But Achieng didn't attend the final day of the trial. She was home, with Omari, building something real, quiet, peaceful. Her father was healthier now, her brothers back in school. Mukami had launched a foundation in her name, the Achieng Initiative, fighting for justice for abused girls across Kenya. Sometimes strangers would stop her in the street and say, "You're that girl from the news." She would smile softly and say, "Not anymore, I'm just me." But deep down she knew she had faced the devil and lived, and now no one would ever bury her truth again.